Good afternoon. My name is Małgorzata Kurzępa. I'm a director and founder of Fairhouse Investments, the company which invests in properties in UK for over 7 years and over 10 years altogether in Europe, let's say. I came from Poland in 2012, and this is where I started my journey with property investing, and I decided to continue it in UK. Last week, I started sharing my experience with you about how to rent your property and how to find the tenants without help from a letting agency or letting agent. I want to continue this subject. So last week we talked about staging, about comparing the prices at the local market, how to prepare the advert and where to advertise. While today I will tell you about what to do when your tenants, the potential prospective tenants, are calling and now you're ready to rent. How to do it, how to choose the best tenants for your property, how to do searches, reference, and AST. What AST stands for, a short hold tenancy, and how to prepare the contract and how what should be included into the tenancy contract. So the first thing, the tenants are calling. You did a great job. The renovation of your flat, of your property is really nice. You did great pictures. The staging was wonderful. You posted your advert, and your phone is calling all the time. You are not able to pick it up. There are too many phone calls, or your email box is just full of emails from potential tenants. So first thing you should do, even before you schedule the viewing, is you should pre-qualify your potential tenants, because sometimes people see the nice property and they are not aware of some facts, and you should be ready to do these checks before you schedule the viewings, because you don't want to waste the tenants' time and your time as well. So first question you should ask after the potential tenants will contact you. So the first thing is if he is he employed. Actually, it doesn't matter if this is it doesn't have to be permanent, but you have to make him aware that he has to be employed anyhow. When does he want to move into the property? Because if your property would be only available in 2 months' time, there is no point to schedule the viewing for someone who wants to move next week, or who just get out of the train and he's calling you from the train station with his suitcase, with a suitcase in his hand. Where do they live now, or he lives now, and why is he leaving his current place? You would be surprised how honest are people, and sometimes they just tell you that they started fighting with everyone around, and this is why they decided to move out. And from my point of view, or your point of view as the potential new landlord, I think it's just, the red light start blinking in your head. So you should be more careful with such people. Are they fulfill the criteria you said? Like, are they non-smokers? Are you sure that they don't? Are they sure that they don't own the pet? You have to make it sure if everything is as you wanted. And the most important thing, you also have to ask how many people would potentially move into the property, would live in the property. Because I'm sure only one person is contacting you, but if this is, for example, a head of the family which has 4 other members, like parents and 3 kids, and you only want to rent 1-bed flat, I mean, they may be happy to live in 1-bed flat, but you won't be happy, because after the time when they decided to move out, probably the damage to the flat would be much higher than if it would be only two people family, or one couple, or a single person who would be the occupier of the property. So please take it under consideration. Be careful, take phone number or any contact details from the potential tenant, because you want to contact them, you want to confirm when they schedule the viewing, you want to confirm the viewing if they sure they would be there. You want to send them address, and you want also send them sometimes a description how to get to the property if it's not easy. If they don't confirm if you confirm the viewing with you and they don't contact you back, don't bother, because it means that they are not serious about viewing the property. And it's not like, okay, maybe I put it wrong. Maybe it's not that they are not serious, but maybe they've already seen 6 properties in the same day, and they pick up one and just they forgot to call you back. So if they don't confirm, you don't go for the viewing. Okay, at least this is what I'm doing. When you schedule the viewings, try to book them as a block viewings with 15 or 20 minutes time per each viewer, potential tenant. Sometimes I don't advise you to book few people for exactly the same time. I know it will save your time, but sometimes people are ashamed. They want to ask some questions about, for example, if the rent is if you happy or are ready to reduce the rent, or about other things, and they could be ashamed to ask in the presence of other people. So you should give them a chance to stay by themselves in the property and have access to you when you would be ready to answer their questions. If you're a woman, don't go by yourself, take someone with you. You have to make them aware that they have to supply a few documents. First of all, you will have to check when you meet them, you will have to check their name and passport, and check if the name they gave you match with the one in passport. We are still responsible for checking the rights of our tenants to stay in UK. So if this is someone who is British, of course, no problem. If there is someone who's from European Union, no problem at all. But if this is someone from outside European Union, you also have to confirm if they have a visa, they have rights to stay. They have to show you 3 last pay slips. I always advise 3 months bank statements. SA 203 when they are employed, self-employed. They have to provide you with the address and contact of their last landlord, and the contact to their current employer. They could ask you questions about the costs of living in the property. So you have to be ready to tell them how much is the council tax, how much is the water bill, how much gas and electricity bill. Please be reasonable. Don't let them soften your heart, because many times I've been in such a situation. This is actually one of the reasons why now I'm using a letting agency, because I'm always too soft and people trying to push me, and I really don't like it. So remember that you provide them with their accommodation, which is your main or biggest asset. This is something which is worth a huge amount of money. You work long for it, and if you put the wrong tenant into your property, it would be very difficult to remove them from there. So please be careful when you choose your potential tenant. Again, I'm not forcing you, of course, but I think you should take under consideration using letting agencies if you live more than 20 or 30 minutes driving from your property. because it will take you time, it will take your time, it will cost you money for the fuel. And remember that first of all, if you're buying the property, you could just put this letting agency cost into the entire budget, and then you could check if it still fits with the numbers or not. And the second thing is that if your property portfolio will start growing, eventually, sooner rather than later, you will have to start to delegate work. And I understand that no one will take that much care of your property as yourself, because you're the one who loves it, you're the one who renovated it, you're the one who bought it. But as I said, eventually you will have to start relying on someone else's work, and this is actually a very good time to start doing it. And you, in the same time, I mean, you can use your time for doing something else, like for example, looking for new prospective purchase property, instead of wasting your time on dealing with tenants or maintenance of the property. But as I said, if you want to do it, you should do it. You should. There is no point to delegate it. Another thing why you should know, or you have to know how to do all this work. As I said at the beginning, I was doing it by myself. Just recently I changed my mind, first of all because now most of my properties are far away from the place where I live, and second thing because so it's a time, and second thing is the cost, because if I want to travel to one of my property, the monthly maintenance costs less than return ticket to my property, if you know what I mean. So it's just not worth it. But coming back to the point, if you want to delegate your work, you have to know how much time it takes, the work takes, and how much money it costs. Indirect cost, like I mean, indirect is not a good word. Like if you pay for something, you have to know how much it costs at the market, what is the market value. And the second thing is also your personal value, because as I said, maybe the time you have to sacrifice for looking for tenant, you can use something else. And it's much easier to delegate job if you know how much this costs and how much this job takes time to be done. Another positives about using the agencies is sorry, I'm coming back to it. I just want to make it clear for everyone. They are this is formal business, so they take full responsibility for what they're doing. They have insurance and they follow all the rules. And the second thing is that if they find a tenant who wouldn't pay rent, their fee is coming from the tenant, what the tenants pay to them. So if the tenants is not paying them, they are not paid. I mean, of course, they would claim this money from you eventually, but the idea is this is their best interest to find you the best tenant and take care of him as much as they could. Let's say you performed all the viewings, you have one tenant a few tenants who are interested in a property, and now you have to choose from them. So there is something like gut feeling, and I strongly advise you to follow it, but also remember that don't be too soft on them. This is another aspect of this. Take under consideration that if you look first trying to find tenant and later you will do the management of the property, then you will be seeing this tenant on a regular basis. At least twice a year you will do checks on the property, so you will be seeing them, and almost every time something happens to the property, you will probably have to go there and talk to them to fix it or find someone who would fix it. So if the first impression is bad on the tenant, or you can't find anything common and it's difficult for you to understand the tenant or find something like, understand each other, then be careful. And personally, I wouldn't rent that property to such person, because as I told you, you will have to stay in touch with this person on a regular basis. If you have very few potential tenants, you should let them negotiate the price, but I would be careful in reducing other criteria than price only. So if they don't fulfill the other criteria, I probably would rather keep the property unoccupied until I find a proper tenant, than rent to someone who I'm not sure if he's honest and capable to pay. Of course, there are situations. Okay, I will talk about it later. You have to tell the tenants if you have to ask him if he agrees with everything that is present in the property. If he's ready to move in 2 or 3 weeks time, but he wants you to keep this property for him, you can ask him for so-called holding deposit. This holding deposit would be taken away from his first rent, would be reduced. So he shouldn't worry about it. If he's an honest person, he would like to have this offer kept for him only. So he would agree to pay you holding deposit. And if you take the holding deposit, it means you won't be advertising this property any longer. Tell him that the agreement is for 6 or for 12 months. Tell him, agree the date when he would be ready to sign the contract, and when he would be ready to pay the deposit, the damage deposit, the one which you have to put to the scheme, government scheme later. Usually I give the draft of the contract to the potential tenants because it's long, it's a couple pages, so I want to make sure that he had enough time to look at it, to read it properly, and he understands what's there and he agrees with everything. Then searches on the tenants, so references. As I said, you have to know the full name, check with the passport, 3 pay slips, 3 months bank statements, contact to the last landlord, and contact to the current employer. You can use the external company which will do the searches for you, the references for the tenant, but I don't know, they probably do some more things. Some of them you can do it by yourself, check the credit score of the tenant, but credit score itself, I don't really feel that it's changed anything. It's just the things I told you about, like 3 pay slips, 3 bank statements, references from current landlord and current employee. For me, it's absolutely enough. Sometimes if the tenant is not able to fulfill the criteria, like for example, he's very young, just graduate from school, you can ask for guarantor, and the guarantor could be a parent or someone who knows your tenant and who agree to pay his rent if something happens to the tenant. The worst scenario, let's say, is that someone doesn't fulfill your criteria and is not able to find a guarantor. But in this case, you can ask for a payment of, for example, 6 months rent in advance. The last aspect I want to talk about today is ASTs, a short hold tenancy. This is the main agreement we sign with our tenants. This is standard agreement. You can buy it ready from Office Depot, or you can find it on the website for landlords. You can also ask your solicitor to prepare the contract for you, this agreement for you. What should be included into this contract? So first of all, details of the tenant, the address of the property, details and address of the landlord, email or phone numbers of both sides, landlord and the tenant, which allows them to contact each other. For how long is the tenancy agreed? What's the rent? How much is the rent? how it's supposed to be paid, when it's supposed to be paid, and the bank account number. What happens if the tenant's is delayed with payments? What is the how high is the deposit? Usually it's 5 weeks rent, and how it would be protected. What is the notice time? Usually the tenant could give you a notice or 2 months notice. The landlord could give a tenant 1 month notice. How it would end it, when it would end it, and all additional circumstances, like the information that the tenant is responsible for the garden, if you agreed to allow the tenant to have a pet, it should be included in the contract. If they are allowed to smoke in the property, it's good to make it included in the contract. Other things are like the information that the tenant should insure it's his property with his possessions in the property, because the insurance for the tenant is not mandatory, but you know, it's good to know one. It's good to have one, and it's good to know that you should have one. Some tenants are just not aware of it. If you want to review the rent in 6 months' time, you can put it into the contract to make the tenant aware. The informations about the routine regular controls, and of course also the information that at the end of tenancy you should get an access to the flat for viewings for potential new tenants. If there are any special agreements between you and the landlord and the tenant, like for example, once I was renting my property, and the electric meter there was pay as you go, and I wanted to change it into the normal one, so there was an information in the AST that I'm allowed to do it. There was also an information that I'm allowed to install the internet, and this is actually everything that should be included in AST. As I said, I usually give a draft to my potential tenants so they could read it, because it's long. They should read it in advance and be aware of what is inside. This was second part of how to rent your property without landlord's help, letting agent help. It's still part 3, which we discuss next week, and it would be about quiet tenancy and right of access, final agreements right when they sign the contract, when we sign the contract with the tenant, and right before they move in, what happens to the deposit, and tenant's responsibilities after he moved into the property. So thank you very much. It was great to talk to you. I wish you all wonderful Sunday afternoon in South London. In my place it's very sunny. I hope it's the same in your place. Thank you very much. Małgorzata Kurzępa, Fair House Investments. Bye bye.